HybridPathways has partnered with industry-recognized security expert and Global Chief Information Security Officer, Roland Cloutier, to share experiences and knowledge about timely security topics. Today, Scott Heislep, Principal Consultant at HybridPathways, is talking to Roland about practical ways to increase your business operational time to value utilizing managed security service providers, MSSPs. Roland Cloutier has been recognized in the IDG CISSO Hall of Fame, CISSO 100 Information Security Executive of the Year, and one of the most influential people in security. His Chief Security Officer experience includes mega corporations, including ByteDance and TikTok, ADP, and EMC. He has held multiple security and anti-terrorism positions within the U.S. government. He wrote the book, Becoming a Global Chief Security Executive Officer, and is a sought-after presenter for governments and organizations around the world. Let's get started.
Thanks for joining us today, Roland. Let's start with the simple questions. What's an MSSP and what form do they take?
Well, Scott, thanks for having me here. And I don't think that was the easiest question because MSSPs are, so broad and so wide. I mean, it's managed security service providers. So, it takes on all different types of fields and functions, everything from security operations centers, critical incident response centers, tier 1 SOC support. It also goes into operational component support, firewalls management and maintenance, component delivery on EDR and EDR response. It really depends on the organization, where they need help, and how best a service provider can engage within their operations stack.
Maybe you can give our listeners an understanding of your experience with building MSSPs.
Yeah, I think I'm fortunate enough to have been on both sides. When I was in my consulting career and building critical infrastructure defense partners, I actually build some security operations center MSSPs. And, back in those times, it was really about tier 2, tier 3 service, meaning that we were taking alerts, validating what those alerts were, and then being able to respond to those in a very specific way in partnership with our customers. Now, as a customer of MSSPs, I've been kind of all over the place. I've had organizations come in and support, as I mentioned before, firewall and IDS management. I've had outsourced my VPN monitoring and management, all the way to having a full stack 24/7 monitoring capability in areas of operation that I didn't have FTE or I couldn't support the time zone. So I've been kind of all around the block with MSSPs, and in each circumstance, we use them specifically for what the business needed at that time. And I think, quite frankly, that's the best way to be able to partner with managed security providers, is to understand what your business needs, what you can and cannot provide, and then how do you fulfill those gaps with a good partner.
Now that you've mentioned some of the classic use scenarios, how is the market changing?
Well, the market's getting smarter and the technology is getting better, and the engagement of cloud platforms for better access to larger amounts of data for MSSPs are really no longer constrained. Remember, at one point, you had to take all of that telemetry information and try to get it to your MSSPs or have them connect into native enterprise defense and monitoring platforms. Today, that predominantly exists in the cloud. And with MSSPs being able to connect directly into that cloud and be able to see the data at real time and be able to engage in the management platforms that are often managed from cloud platforms, they have a better capability to support at the moment in real time and be able to see a broader set of technologies across an enterprise or a cloud infrastructure that they had never seen before. So it's changing there. Also, they're technically getting better. They have better capabilities, such as, I mentioned EDR support, being able to inspect traffic and be able to go deeper using forensics tools and technologies. So MSSPs are getting better. Our platforms are getting more diverse and cloud-based, and it's actually helping us engage these service providers even better.
Well, that's great info. Roland, you're known in the industry for building some of the best and most advanced SOCs in the commercial world. How do you make the decision of build versus buy?
This is only like a 30-minute podcast, right? So there's a lot that goes into that, Scott. Let's think about first, what's the complexity of your environment? That has to be one of the first things that we talk about is the complexity in the environment. Can someone really understand and know what's happening in your environment? The larger the infrastructure, the more complex and global it is, the harder it is to train a partner to be a core operational part of your monitoring stack. So I think that's one consideration and concern. The other is really, what are the services you're delivering back to your business? Remember, you're a business operation protection group for your company. So what does that mean? That means you're providing most often a shared service across your organization to defend, detect, monitor, and respond. What within those capabilities can you or can you not do? So decide what you're going to deliver to your business is probably really job one, and what they need is job two. And then you fill in those gaps using service providers or partners or different methods to do that. So I think that's really the second part of it. Third, I would say is, how do you support the type of operation you have, whether it's global, 24/7, theaters of operation. I mean, these things matter because these are, eyes on screens, fingers on keyboard. These are humans. These are people that have to actually do this work. And when you get into 24/7 operational management, remember, when you're sleeping somewhere else in the globe, somebody's awake. So how do you manage that? Are some of those services best performed by different skilled practitioners? Also, financial considerations have to go into place. Do you want to pay for a US-based tier 1 SOC analyst to do rudimentary things that potentially a resource in another part of the world could do at an even better rate in the time frames that you need them to do? So financial costing analysis is really important when you go down this path of, do I use an MSSP or not?
Thank you. So as we dig into the pros and cons a little bit more, what are some of the elements of time to defense, and what should security executives look at in that realm?
This is a great question. Another hard one to kind of get through, but think about what you just asked, that concept of time to defense. We defend, we detect, we monitor, and then we respond. So let's talk about defense. The time to defense often is a kind of a reoccurring life cycle, right? So I have something out there to be able to defend. I detect in a platform or technology that then gets to a monitoring capability that then I have to do an OODA loop, make a decision, and get it back to my defense capability. So how long does it take to go through those three services, if you will, for my technology to see it, for it to go to a monitoring person to make a decision, to then go back to my defensive platform to make adjustments? Super important. We used to talk about, time lagging within your environment. You don't want days, weeks, months of someone in your environment, or if you know about a potential issue, to resolve that. So one of the tricks with utilizing MSSPs is, where do they best fit, and what are their capabilities to be able to be part of your defense loop from the time your technology finds it, to the time that it is monitored, to the time that you can make an operational SecDevOps kind of change into your environment to defend against it. So one of the key principles here is finding a partner, depending on what part of that loop you need, that can do that. And sometimes that's difficult. They're only giving you notifications. If it's that type of monitoring organization, then you're probably going to be less able to use them for some of your key critical areas. If you find an MSSP that has integrated defense capabilities, access to your move, add, change environment, security defensive operations, then you could potentially use them as someone sitting in your own building, just happen to be sitting in someone else's building. So that's a big consideration when thinking about how you build your partners and what level of integration you need to have from a security provider inside your operations.
Yeah, this all seems like it's a big effort. How big do you think it is, and what are some of the major components?
Well, it's as big as how you decide to use them from an operating point of view. Here, for instance, if I'm going to outsource potential tier one operations to a third party, that might be simple as call centers, ticket tracking, and my information database that they need to have access to, in a few weeks of training and integration in that service path. If I'm going to have someone at the other end of that taking tier 3, tier 4 operational incident response capabilities, doing managed response type work, and being able to integrate tools back into my environment to do introspective evidence collection, containment, and defense, that's a big lift, because obviously they have to know your environment, train within your environment, have access to your tools and your infrastructure. They have to have knowledge about your business and your company. They also have to understand how to operate with your legal teams and your IR teams, and on and on. So it could take from weeks, from a focused use of lower level security operations, to months, and I'm talking 6 months to a year, to get them fully integrated as a critical incident response provider for your entire enterprise. So it all depends on what you need them for.
Talent has been an industry-wide issue recently. How does that impact the decision-making around these services?
It gets back to what can you deliver, right? I mean, if you can find talent at a reasonable cost that makes sense to your business and organization, and it's as equative to what you would do with a service provider, it might be an easy answer for you. But you're right, talent has been difficult. -4% unemployment rate in security risk and privacy programs and technology in general. Having, when you get above L1 type capability, someone with 3 to call it 8 years experience in detection and response or managed security operations, that is getting harder and harder to find. And you layer on top of that the consideration of 24/7 operations, right? You don't have a choice. The world attacks you 24/7. It's not like, we'll look at the monitoring in the morning. That's just not realistic for most organizations. It's too critical to the digitization of their business. So I think talent does impact it. And it brings me back to this discussion that I often have with my peers about how do you stack your service delivery capabilities. It used to be, monitoring and response was one thing. Monitoring and response could be two very different services. Monitoring can be 3 different services in your environment, depending how you tier them out and what their accountability and responsibilities are. So I think the more you take a pragmatic view of how what services you need to deliver and who can deliver them and what level they have to be delivered, you can make some intelligent decisions on whether you can engage service providers to help you do that work in a very meaningful way.
You mentioned earlier in the conversation that you're a big believer in force multiplication. Can you expand on that for our listeners?
Yeah, the concept of this force multiplication use is, really a kind of a military term that I took from my time in the military, where depending on the mission area, you can often utilize these type of services in a way that gives you an advantage, a business advantage to accomplish different things. And I'll give you some considerations here. A couple times during my career, I've done a lot of mergers and acquisitions, so a ton of M&A. And you're consuming these organizations into your large global monitoring platform, but there's always a lag time by the time that you get to from day zero to day 180 fully integrated into your environment. And you need to ensure that you're monitoring those the same way that you'd be monitoring your own environment. You're now accountable and responsible for those. So how do you do that in geos that you're not deployed, in industries you're not familiar with technologies that haven't transferred over to what's already integrated into your environment? And you can use a force multiplier, and that is a service provider who has those capabilities, who can be adjacent to you or part of your defensive ecosystem, where they can monitor those M&As until you don't need them anymore, and they're fully monitored on your standardized platform. That's certainly one way to do it. I think the management and utilization of standardized technology, defensive technology, anything from firewalls to web app defense to intrusion detection to DLP, these type of environments don't change. DLP maybe, but predominantly they don't change as aggressively as other technologies. There's long regression testing for any type of real major moves that you have to make, and that when it's emergent, you can often do that within a reasonable time, even with a partner. So if you want to focus on new technology, reduce your operational cost, and leverage a third party to do work where you now don't have to keep someone on doing move, add, change type work, where they could actually be focused on deploying next generation technology or higher level engineering across the platform and across your clouds, and give that day-to-day maintenance type stuff to a third party. You're leveraging two types of resources to go in very different ways. One at a lower cost to do lower cost work, while you have the other one internally focused on your business. I mean, these are great ways that you can use force multiplication from my standpoint.
Thank you so much for that. And continuing down the why do we need one from MSSPs, do you have some examples of how we can accelerate business within this space?
Oh yeah, I mean, think about it. Everyone's digitizing, going to the cloud, doing heterogeneous cloud environments today. It takes a long time to stand that up and get educated and get your own team. Just say you're going to do it yourself. Let's just take a step back and say, I want to manage my own security operations capabilities, detection, incident response, but I'm moving from IR to cloud. My business is going at 420 miles an hour into cloud, and I don't want to slow them down because I don't have that capability. What if you partnered with a cloud defense security provider that can actually do the monitoring for you in partnership to you have that capability? You allow your business to move forward securely and do that. Same way on, by the way, on infrastructure defense assurance, right? We often bring consultants and contractors in to help us design the security programs and security technologies around our cloud offerings. You can do the same thing with the manageability of that environment and the technologies used to manage and defend and detect in those environments with a security provider while the business is moving forward. And you're finding the right resources to fill those goals. We talked about M&As. We can talk about joint ventures, potentially other regions where you're not familiar with. Maybe there's a language issue, or maybe you're going to, you're a U.S.-based company. You're doing work in Asia, and you need to get directly involved with operations in other parts of the world that have different language skills. Can you use a third-party service provider to help you there? So there's many, many different ways that you can help your business accelerate. I think cloud adoption, M&A, those are the two probably fastest ways. And even SaaS and PaaS, deployments for your organization. There are many companies out there that all they do is monitoring of SaaS infrastructure, and they can help you get to a level of efficacy and assurance with your own team while they're doing the work for you.
I think there's a somewhat negative perception in the industry of maybe a lack of partnership and engagement with MSSPs. How do you look at that?
You get in what you put in. You get out what you put in. I guess I've had all types of relationships and providers in this space. Typically, I've found out when I'm less engaged, I have more problems. When I'm more engaged, I have a great partnership and and great opportunities. One of the first things you have to do, though, up front is really, Scott, think about the due diligence here. This is not easy work. These are, you have to find a partner that has the capabilities and the skills of the services that you want them to provide for you. And you have to, A, know what you want, B, have a method or a mechanism to investigate that through either the services, that they're telling you about, that you can go on site and see, talk to some of their customers, things of that nature. And then make sure that it is a constant engagement environment. This is not a fire and forget relationship. This is now a part of your total workforce, right? Let me say that again. When you use a managed security service as a chief security officer, you may not be managing them day to day, but they are part of your total workforce, and you have to treat it as such. You have to make sure you're engaged with their leadership and their management, setting expectations, talking about changes in your threat environment, talking about changes in your operating environment, talk about issues you're having internally with your own tech stacks and what you're doing about that. So there's a lot that goes on when we talk about relationships. It's not just about going out to dinner with the sales team. It's sitting down with the operational leadership that you've partnered with to do that, and that's our responsibility. Treat them as part of your operating ecosystem, and make sure you treat them as part of your workforce.
This is all very helpful. What other tips or ideas do you have for being successful in utilizing MSSPs?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, some of the base stuff we talked about, doing your great investigation up front, making sure you have the right partner. QBRs, quarterly briefing reviews, an absolute must. Depending on how deep they're embedded into your organization and the level of services, consider doing monthly updates like you would do with some of your directs and their operations, right? It really depends, but you have to have QBRs. In order to do QBRs, what do you have to have? Really good metrics. I mean, like really, really good metrics. Time to detection, time to response, validation of those metrics. So sometimes they're doing those metrics for them. Sometimes you need to do them yourself to keep everybody honest. So get a good set of metrics that make sense for the services they're doing. How fast they respond to tickets, right? We don't want to make this all about how fast can I close a ticket, because that will actually hurt you in the long run. It's all about how fast do I operate on a ticket, and what is the efficacy of the service that I provided. So if you want to spend some time there. I like to have all hands calls with the teams that are not part of my full-time enterprise or organizational structure. So how do I say, as the customer, as the chief security officer of company X, Y, and Z, that they're important to me, I know what they're doing, and I appreciate it. You can even do things like, probably not bonus programs, although I've seen that work, but you can do award programs for the best third-party support employee. You want to make them feel like they are appreciated, that you understand the critical job that they're doing, and they're doing that sort of work. So QBRs, metrics, engaging that part of your workforce, really, really important.
Oh, that's super helpful. Thank you. Kind of moving on a little bit, your mantra has been on this concept of business operations protection. How does that play into your thoughts on MSSPs?
It's kind of, just another way of you being a good security executive. As a business security executive, your responsibility is to understand the value chain of your business, the parts of that value chain that you need to protect and defend, what those components are, how best to defend that, what the threats are. All of these things take a level of service effort. I mean, think about it. Just the ability to go through the value chain of your business and do a threat assessment is a really big project. Now, take that down and then apply a technology stack to each one of those within a priority capability based on critical asset protection program. So a CAP, or critical asset protection program, is another major function. Now that flows into your monitoring capability. all along the way, you're defending and being able to do things that you've committed as a business leader, and it takes the ability to understand that risk, to evaluate and calculate that risk, to prioritize those risks based on the business's go-to-market and the business's requirements. And then it takes you as a good financial business executive to understand where to best leverage resources and the best cost possible to deliver the most effective services to defend that ecosystem. So when I talk about business operations protection, this is no different. This is a business decision. Some people often look at it, well, I'm outsourcing. No, you're sourcing, right? Your supply chain for security doesn't necessarily mean you have to be all internal. This can be external as well. This can be an engagement model that has different parts of a supply chain that you utilize to do the right level of work at the right time for the right cost for your business. MSSPs fit right into this model because if you're doing a less valued job at an appropriate industry level cost for your company, they're going to appreciate that, and you're going to be seen as a good business leader. If you're building the greatest and latest and trying to staff every portion of that within one geo, under one cost structure, you're probably not doing the right thing for your business. So this is all part of being a good business executive, is understanding what level of services to bring to bear.
Mm-hmm. This sounds like quite a journey. What programs should security risk and privacy teams consider around all of this?
Well, you actually just kind of said them all. Security, risk, and privacy, Scott. I don't even know why I'm doing this, man. That's nice softball. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
The field of operational defense programs have really, really widened. If you think about, early days of security control, it's, all of the same stuff I talked about, monitoring for EDR back then, anti-malware defense, however you want to look at it, firewalls, IDS. Now you have CSPM models, for posture management. You have shift left alert models for understanding code variances or within product development or DevOps. I mean, there's so many different technologies out there that we need to look at the output and make a reasonable decision on to protect the business. It's almost impossible to do it all. So operationally, I think you can look at different aspects of your technical defense operation, your software defense and management operation, and your product areas, and kind of do the same thing. There are niche players in each of these areas of managed security providers. Is there an opportunity for you to do it better, faster, cheaper, with more efficacy using a provider? Now, take privacy. Privacy, used to be a thing we talked about and rules we had in place and maybe some, cookie validation. Not so much anymore, right? If you think about the 17 new laws in the last 2 years across the globe, they have real requirements for technical operations and controls around data defense and access assurance. How are you looking at that information? Do you start up a capability for privacy operations control or privacy engineering control management through the use of a service provider until you can get your legs under you? Or is that the best way to do it, to understand the movement of traffic or the negative incident implications of readouts from privacy technology that we've now put into our environments to be able to say, hey, I have a privacy incident and we have a special way to monitor it? No two IRs are alike, and security and privacy IRs are definitely different. So again, you can use it there. From a risk perspective, you can use managed security providers to do a constant lifecycle review of your business's value chain. Do you have gaps in your defensive capabilities you didn't know about? Can they come in and do on a monthly, quarterly basis to do parts of your risk continuum that you just can't get to, or you can't find the people to do it? I mean, those are also great opportunities when you talk about managed security, risk, and privacy providers. So a bunch of different ways to use them. As many of the ways that you need to defend and protect your company, you can probably find a provider that can help leverage their resources to make you successful.
Roland, we're hearing a lot about AI, and it seems to be really impacting security operations. What are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, Scott, I coming from an industry where AI is pretty important, I think that there are just opportunities in this space right now for AI and chief security officers. So let's talk about what AI is going to bring. Like, let's talk about the additional work, because there's going to be a lot of additional work, and it's not going to come overnight because, quite frankly, there isn't technology to be there. This isn't a discussion on AI. I'm sure we could have one later, but AI involves things like AI platform defense, AI data defense, bias defense, AI ecosystem integration defense. So how does AI, how do we establish controls into AI that ensures it can't reach out and automatically create APIs to other technologies? I mean, there's some really large areas here around how do we ensure the sanctity of the AI platform, no one messes with the data or is able to introduce information to the data sets that it has, and how do we ensure that the continuum of information coming is used in the right way. So, I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that we're going to have to understand as technology comes out, integrate into our operations. Today, the technologies that are mature in this space are actually about just understanding where your AI is. So there is technology available today for security practitioners to be able to scan their environment, understand where AI is being used, what data sets you're connecting in to do some really basic security and validation. It gives you transparency and enables you to start to think about, quote unquote, what your AI platform is. So we can start there. However, there's things that this is probably going to be a little, uncomfortable for I think some people to hear, but this is going to change the way we do business. Like SOC level 1, do we even have to do that? Like, why can't AI make intelligent decisions for us and validate information that takes someone 15 minutes to 2 hours to look at? If AI can have access to the data sets, understands the principles of the conclusion that we're trying to come with, and know the one or two outputs that it can affect, can we get rid of security operations level 1? Like, is there an opportunity for managed security services to provide this, or an AI technology for us to reduce level 1 and level 2 maybe security operations? So it's going to change the skill level that we need to be able to manage our technology. We're going to have to uplift our organizations and take from areas that potentially AI can replace to do that. This is going to happen over time. What I encourage my peers to do, though, is start to look at your organization and where it's being used and how you can help them think and defend it now. But when we're talking about managed security service providers, we're going to have to start looking at, is there someone that can provide me the technology validation and operation management of AI that helps me reduce SOC level 1, SOC level 2 type work entirely from my environment? And that's a huge opportunity for us.
Removing the SOC level 1 and level 2 kind of leaves you with level 3. What are your thoughts about dedicated versus pooled resources in that space? Do you like to see the same name always, or do you like to know that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket from a MSSP's resource perspective?
So you like level 3, level 4 type support, right?
Yeah.
It's a hard question. I'm going to answer it like this. I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on the weekends, but let me answer it like this. I want them to be familiar with my environment, technology, and our post orders, so to speak. So what do they do when something bad happens, and how do they make good decisions if they don't know my environment? They have to know my environment. They have to understand our technical setup. They have to understand what they're defending, what the threats are. That takes time. And if you have pooled resources at this higher level, the problem is they're going to make technical decisions without the opportunity to understand the environment in which they're operating, right? They're going to have book knowledge, so to speak, but not street knowledge. And that's two very different things when you're now making decisions that potentially can impact the operation of the business I'm accountable to protect. So I like to see a consistent workforce that is applied to the services that are being delivered to my ecosystem, is how I look at that.
Thank you very much, Roland, for sharing your knowledge here, and I appreciate all of it, and thanks again.
Hey, Scott, it was great to be here, and thanks for having me.
Awesome.